Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by a very special guest. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last month, and it's been a lot of fun to work with him pretty closely on some projects that we're doing for him and other members of his team. But excited to welcome on founder and CEO of TrueNorth Restoration, Justin Donat. Justin, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks, Hayden. Thanks for having us. Likewise, I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the last few months as we partnered with you guys, and excited to share a little bit about that partnership on here.
It's going to be an awesome podcast. So many different things I think we could talk about today. We were talking a little bit before we started recording that, there's almost too much to fit into one episode. And I'm sure we're going to have you guys back on, you or other members of your team back on to talk more. But today I think it'd be really cool. I'd like to just get to know a little bit and introduce you a little bit to our audience and kind of maybe talk a little bit about your background. And then from there, we can dive into all things restoration and True North. But if you wouldn't mind, Justin, let's start by talking a little bit about who you are and kind of your career background a little bit and what led you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I went to the University of Arkansas, very great degree in the business world. I got a piano performance degree. So
heck yeah,
had nothing to do with business. I went back and got my MBA in international business in Northwest Arkansas, worked for a company there, JB Hunt Transportation, really cut my teeth in the corporate world. I worked at their headquarters, was 17,000 employees, and learned a ton as I was getting my MBA. At the time I was getting married and starting life, just, young 20s. And from there, worked a handful of years there, then quit. I kind of worked up into the finance side of that. At one point, I was managing the 401k there and retirement services and benefits financials. And then I spent a small stint at a hedge fund, kind of doing more market research analysis there. I definitely married up. My wife is a athlete. Her whole family are athletes. She was captain of the volleyball team at Arkansas. She went pro, so we moved to Switzerland for a short while.
Wow, that's
working
cool.
in the hedge fund. And so I say all that because I got so many weird. I spent 2 years as a wildland firefighter in my college summers, and all these weird avenues to help me kind of come to this point where in 2015 we came back from Switzerland and didn't know what I was going to do. I was kind of burnt out on corporate, but I loved business. That's when I kind of realized I think I'm an entrepreneur. And so a family friend who had ran a carpet cleaning company kind of introduced me to the industry. And we thought it was great. We were excited. Everyone else thought we were just nuts. So me and my wife moved to Denver, Colorado, and we started a carpet cleaning company that dabbled in restoration. It was fun for a year and a half. I mean, we were cleaning carpets. She was in the van with me. But it was about a year and a half in that we realized it was the wrong business model, and really the future of the business was restoration. So we shifted it, spent a few years kind of perfecting that business model, the restoration model here in Denver, growing it to a few locations. And then 2020, realizing the best model to multiply and scale this was the franchising side. So partnered with my two business partners now, Chris Coleman and Ray, who are our chief franchise officer and COO, and worked on our franchise disclosure documents, started franchising, and now we have 17 locations around the country.
Awesome. There's so many things I think are so cool that I want to talk about, and we could spend whole podcasts on. First and foremost, Woo Pig. I mean, I got to get that out the way first. Yeah. That's so cool. I didn't know you went to University of Arkansas. But the thing that I thought was so interesting was the very beginning when you were talking about your degrees. Very right brain and left brain, Justin. That's something that I think is really like the creativity, but also your business minded. Like, do you feel like that gave you a leg up across your career, and now that you're franchising and growing this really cool restoration company in True North, having kind of some right brain, left brain, the art and the science pieces all kind of coming together. Do you feel like that was helpful to you over the years? Do you feel like it's been a hindrance? I guess what do you think about having kind of those different technical skills?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love looking at it pretty in depth. And I'll be really honest, while there's a lot of strengths in that, there's also a lot of weaknesses And I like looking at both. I try to hire out my weaknesses. I think what it helped me was really look at big picture stuff. And even on this podcast, I'm hoping we talk a little more macroeconomic things. What
Yeah.
are the macroeconomic headwinds of restoration in our industry and the complexities of it? I love spending time talking about that. On a personal level, I love talking more philosophy and the reasons of why things happen. That can easily, I heard a saying, you can be a dreamer, but don't live in your bed. And so that can be a weakness of sometimes you just get in the clouds and you start thinking too much. So my corporate time at corporate and getting my MBA really kind of refined more of my weaknesses. And then I just really focus on hiring out my weaknesses from our
Yeah.
COO, my brother, who is a very opposite of me, more details oriented. And so yeah, it's helped. It helps me see a more broad picture of things. I think it was Vern Harnish with the book Scaling Up, who really talks very negative about CEOs and owners coming on to things like this and saying, I'm the visionary. It's like, one, that just sounds creepy, and it also just sounds weird. While I
Yeah.
do kind of feel like I am the visionary, I say that almost as negative. I really got to find good people who can help me build systems,
Yeah.
who are detail oriented, to help build the business. At the end of the day, you're only as good as the team around you. So yeah, it's been good and bad at times too. Just being very honest.
Well, no. And I think you hit it right on the head. Like that's the thing about being big picture minded is you've got to find people or surround yourself with people that can handle the details. And like I'm super blessed to work with a team that is very good at the details because I am, we're kindred spirits in that way, Justin. Like I feel like I'm really good at seeing the big picture and dreaming big and setting big goals. But at times I can miss on the day-to-day details. And so that's what's so great working with a team like I do that, you know, I have people around me that are like, okay, Hayden, that's awesome. That's a great goal. Here's how we're going to get it done. And I'm like, awesome. Let's do it. It makes it really easy to like build out a game plan when you surround yourself with people that can do that stuff. And so it's a skill that I'm working on, and I feel like I've gotten better at over the years. But um, it's also just cool to surround yourself with people like that. So I love it. Let's talk big picture. You're big picture guy. I'm a big picture guy. Let's talk big picture about restoration.
Yeah.
This is a topic that, obviously at Spot On Solutions, we're big in the restoration industry. That's our bread and butter. That's who we work with on a day-to-day basis. I've had multiple phone calls today with other clients talking about restoration and how we help them grow their businesses. What do you love about the restoration space? Obviously, and I say love legitimately because I don't think you would have done what you've done and continued to grow a 17 location franchise if you didn't love it to some extent. So what attracts you to the restoration industry? What are some things that you've just become passionate about within the restoration world?
Yeah. Oh, great question. I think it comes down to just a handful of things. Starting extremely big picture, the purpose of True North, and we don't really put this out there a whole lot. We talk about our mission, vision, and our core values, but our purpose is a little bit aside from that. I remember, in my young 20s, I was working corporate, putting in 60 hours a week, and I felt like I was hardly making money. I was trying to get married and buy a house, and life was really hard. Like I said, there was a lot of macroeconomic headwinds, and I'm talking 2012 through 2015. Nowadays you look at starting housing prices and stuff. There's a lot of factors, macroeconomic factors, really holding people back from being able to live the life they want to. And I'm talking to peers and friends who are saying they're delaying getting married or even having kids and enjoying life because they can't figure out how to make money very well. So kind of the purpose of True North for me it's an opportunity to allow more people to become business owners, which I think is one of the best ways to create wealth, not just personally, but even just economically for a country or something. So I heard this phrase, franchising may be the number one way of the democratization of capitalism. And I love that phrase, democratization of capitalism. I think most people who are probably would be on this podcast are capitalists. We all believe in free market enterprise and growing businesses. And the thing is, if there's one owner growing a large company, a lot of that wealth is being funneled into one person. With franchising, you're literally taking people and having them become owners of their location, which is a lot of that wealth creation is going right to them. And so you're creating a better, again, I like the phrase, that democratization of capitalism is going to more people. And like the saying says, all ships rise with the tide. We're seeing more and more success with people across the country than we could individually if I just try to grow this here in Denver and be my own thing. So that's really gets to the purpose of why we do this. And that if you don't have purpose, then yeah, you're not excited, you're not passionate. It's just another job. On the flip side, why restoration specific is a couple things. One, it's so hands-on helping people. I know people
Yep.
in corporate jobs who are like, pushing numbers all day and they, what am I doing with my life? How am I helping people?
Yep.
Am I changing the world at all? And I don't mean to over romanticize what we do. At the end of the day, it can be a dirty job and kind of gross at times, but especially when you get in the catastrophe side with hurricanes, things like that, you really get a front row seat of being able to help people when someone's house is destroyed. We've had people crying on their front steps on fires or hurricanes, and we're coming in and we want to first empathize and listen, but we are the practical solution to fix their homes and get it back. And that's just incredibly rewarding. And you don't have to sell that kind of reward. You don't have to like fake it. Like, trust me, it's rewarding when we put the spreadsheet together or something. No, like you're putting homes back together. Those are people's kingdoms. The reward is very obvious in that. And I love that. And then thirdly, kind of the macroeconomic world of the restoration space, it's pretty good margins. We should do another podcast where I talk about all the negatives of restoration too, because there are a lot of negatives. It's
There's some
very
challenges
hard
for sure. Yep.
it's a very complex business model. And there's a lot of very simple franchise models for the home services like pest control or lawn care or painting or something that they're just easier. But what I like about restoration is it's extremely scalable. The size of the industry and market that we're talking about, is massive compared to some of these other smaller, more simple, basic franchise or business structures. So really the third main point is restoration is such a large industry. There's such a large opportunity. It's very decentralized right now. Now we'll probably get into a little bit more, but you're seeing a lot more centralizing of that over the last few years, a lot of mergers and acquisitions and consolidation. And seeing some of that is what, especially 2018, 2019, probably all the way through 2020, really, when the capital markets were very frothy, you saw a lot of that. That really got us to push, like, we need to grow and expand with this in the franchising model. So those are kind of the three main reasons that get me out of bed and get me excited.
Well, and your last points there, I think are intriguing to me because it's something that we've all seen. We've all seen more private equity money and things start kind of filtering into the restoration space. And, your background isn't necessarily private equity, but, hedge funds and things like that. Like, is that something that, well, I guess this would be a two-part question, I guess. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's more private equity money filtering into restoration? Is it just, they're taking notice of a cool industry, or what's kind of happening there? And in your opinion, is good or bad? Like, what are your thoughts and feelings on a lot more of that money coming into the restoration world?
Really good questions. I'll answer them very separately too.
Yeah.
The reasons why I think are have to do with one, it's a very decentralized industry, and usually that's what private equity or private capital is looking for. Something decentralized that can become more centralized, create efficiencies, which therefore will create a higher EBITDA multiple or liquidity event if they sell. So there's a lot of opportunity for private equity in this space. You don't want to get an overcrowded, hyper centralized, over commoditized industry. So kind of big picture, that's why private equity is moving in. And then there's also strategic partnerships in private equity where, was it BlackRock or Blackstone that bought ServPro, and they have a whole portfolio of commercial properties that now they have a service company to service those. So there's a lot of strategic partnerships in that. And I don't want to talk overly negative about PE. There's a lot of really good things in PE also. And then kind of the second question, is it good or bad for the industry? I mean, that is a loaded question.
Yeah.
Like I said, with decentralized industry, there are a lot of inefficiencies, and you see it all the time in the estimating side of restoration. The contractor trying to argue with the adjuster and using this price sheet versus this price sheet. Ultimately, efficiency is better for virtually everyone. Especially the customer usually wins in that. You get price reduction, efficient claims processes, things like that. So you want to see a more centralized process. More efficiency, though, means commoditization of the industry. So I hear stories from guys back in the 80s and 90s who I threw 3 fans in a basement and made $5,000, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it was the Wild West. And those days are over. I mean, we are seeing just a lot more efficient ways of doing things, set up price structures, and I think those kind of crazy heyday stories attract a lot of people to the industry. Like, oh, I can go make a ton of money. And there's a lot of chucks in the trucks out there trying to start restoration companies right now, and they're failing. They just don't have scalability to go out to the market and cut contracts with preferred insurance carriers directly. They're going through instead TPAs and things like that. So I actually think there's a lot of value we can bring to the franchise owners, our franchisees, in the scalability sense when we look nationally and can create efficiencies by landing large national contracts directly with insurance carriers or vendor programs, vendor deals for our equipment and things like that. It creates efficiencies in a fairly inefficient industry, which brings a lot of value. So is it good on the private equity side? Again, every situation is a little bit different, and
Right.
I know a lot of great companies that have went private equity, and it opens up those strategic partnerships, capital, marketing ability, acquisition of talent, all sorts of great things. But a lot of times it can also be negative. I think venture capital, I've heard the phrase vulture capital. They come in and all they want to do is cut costs as much as possible at the expense of the customer, in this case, the homeowner or building owner's claims process not being as high of quality control, and ultimately just pushing value to their, whether it's public company shareholder or private company limited partners and things like that. So there's a negative side to private equity too. So we stay away from it for that reason. We want to have full control because we do care about the quality control. At the end of the day, our customer is the person who has the loss, whether it's that homeowner or the commercial building owner. And we want to be in control of that claims process to make sure they are taken care of from A to Z.
The Success Elevated podcast is brought to you by SOS Navigator. SOS Navigator is an on-demand training platform geared towards marketing, personal development, and business growth. We understand that as a business owner in the service industry, you wear a million hats. Let SOS Navigator be a simple and cost-effective way for you to continue to grow your business. Click the link in the show notes below and use code SOS Podcast to get 10% off your next on-demand training course.
You mentioned something there that I just hadn't thought of, because we've had this conversation before with other industry owners, like with other restoration owners in the industry. But I like the efficiency thought that like private equity is going to promote. It's going to provoke people to have to be more efficient. Like you've got to be like, whether it's private equity in your own company, maybe you're getting purchased by, a custom or something, something like that happens, or your competitors are getting more efficient and there's price reduction and there's things happening that are going to force you to be like, okay, we've got to change or change our structure or change how we operate in order to be more competitive. And, that's another huge conversation that a lot of our restoration owners come to us and we have strategy meetings and, I get questions all the time talking about competition. Like it feels like especially the last year or two, competition in the restoration world has just like exploded. And it just feels like there's a restoration company on every street corner now. And so, you guys at TrueNorth and you can go as macro or as micro as you want with this, but how do you feel like you guys are trying to do what are you trying to do to separate yourselves from the competition? Is it being more efficient? Is it, developing better processes? What are you guys doing to maybe kind of combat some of this just explosion of competition?
Oh yeah, great question. Great point on that. What's really interesting, just kind of back up, I'm feeling the same feelings on the amount of competition entering the space. I think at one point I looked how much competitors are in Denver, and it was like 82, and then like 4 years later it was like 360 or something. It was something ridiculous like that. But what's interesting, I was just reading the state of the industry, state of the union industry report in restoration, and last year it actually was a lot of consolidation, a lot of attrition, and it actually a reduction in competition. There was, I think, roughly, I'd have to double check the numbers, but it was roughly like 7,400 restoration companies in 2022 versus 2023, going down to, I want to say, about 5,800. So, those few years where everyone was like, oh yeah, go start a restoration company instead of, a handyman service or a window cleaning service. There was a lot of people that jumped in the industry the last 5, 6, 7 years. But then I think what happened is you started seeing the medium size and big sizes, a lot of mergers and acquisitions being gobbled up, and a lot of little guys who thought they were going to jump into this and it's going to be easy, and we're just going to be getting gold all day, every day in the industry. It's not the case. It's getting a little bit commoditized and tighter, a lot more competition. And last year was a kind of a reversal of that trend where more restoration companies actually closed their doors. So our differentiation, our kind of value proposition we have is, I think you really do have to grow or you die, in the sense. So that's why we went with the franchising model. We could grow slower and do a branch model, or again, I could just, be an island in Denver and be okay for a while. We had a good location going there. But I saw the opportunity. If we grow, we will have that kind of market appeal to be able to go after larger contracts. One of our big differentiators, though, is we do a lot in the catastrophe side nationally. So, for example, we had I think we had 9 franchises during Hurricane Ian in Fort Myers, and we have Fort Myers location, and we have a really great group of franchise owners. We all get along really well, and every single location from around the country, including our Hawaii office, our Oregon office, our Pennsylvania, they all came down to Florida for a couple months and got one. They made a lot of money doing that. They were able to help a lot of people. So just having that network of knowing, hey, we have a Fort Myers office and he's landing 100 times more work than he can possibly land. Come on down. One other differentiator we have, and I'm actually really proud of this, and I won't spend too much time talking about it, but we have our franchise locations do a lot of residential and commercial. And there's different franchise models where they really focus on the residential piece, and then they'll create another entity for the commercial side. And we want to let people build their company in the best way they feel fit. So some people want a smaller location. They focus on residential, that local market only. That's really great. It's a really great business model for a lot of people. Then there's some of those gung-ho guys who just want to say, they're the cowboys of the group, who they love the catastrophe stuff. They love the large loss commercial side. And we started the last few years landing a lot more of that, realizing we had a handful of guys in-house that really wanted to get into that. So we have that ability to kind of go both ways, or you can double up on it. You can kind of custom make it the way you want. And we don't restrict our franchisees to one or the other.
I love it. I think that's been something that, we've even noticed as we've kind of started this partnership, is that you allow a lot of freedom with your franchise owners to kind of make some of those decisions. And obviously they're a franchise, there's systems, we're going to, help them develop and grow, but how they do it, or to what extent they do it, you allow a lot of freedom to happen. And, I think this is a perfect way to kind of transition here, because I think it lends a lot to who you are and your leadership style. But I've got to work closely with like some of your franchisees, like Brennan and Noah, and I've really enjoyed working with them. And I'd love to get your thoughts and your opinions on leadership, because I feel like you've got some great leaders that are franchise owners for you. And so, and I would, what's that famous line from Remember the Titans? Attitude reflect leadership, or something like that. I feel like there's a good leader will also develop good leaders, or will find other good leaders. And so I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on leadership and how you've maybe developed that within yourself, or what you've done to, just become a better leader at TrueNorth.
Yeah. Oh, great question. Well, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I love reading. I absolutely
Yeah.
love reading. I got a whole stack here. I don't want to bore you. I've got Alex Duda's new Restoration Millionaire,
Oh yeah, that guy's awesome.
reading Vern Harnish, Scaling Up, the E-Myth. So I'm an avid reader, and I'm sure a lot of people that come on these say that, but I mean, every night I'm reading a book. And to kind of answer your question on the leadership side, I I probably have a little more negative approach on answering that. I kind of saw bad leadership when I was in corporate. I kind of hated my job. I hated the micromanaging side of it. And there are people are built very different. And so you have to look at their strengths, their weaknesses, their personalities, and see how they fit into an organization really well. A franchise owner is a unique person. They they really have to have a piece of entrepreneur in them where they're going to be figuring out problems on their own, but they also want to be able to follow a system. We've got a consistent branding and a system that also needs to be followed. You're exactly right, Hayden. You have to find really great leaders. And I think a couple things I look for in that is ultimately people who are incredibly proactive and have high moral values. And what I mean by that is it's really hard to teach people good character,
Yeah.
if not impossible. I mean, it's basically impossible. You can teach them restoration. You can teach them how to tear out drywall. You can teach them how to use a moisture meter. So all of that comes very secondary. I don't look for people with hyper impressive resumes and who is here and there. We really vet our people based on their personality and their character. Because again, you can't change that. If you get a bad
Yeah.
apple in, good luck changing someone's character around that. So we are really lucky. Here's a little secret. I might regret saying this on here, but we have said no to a few people,
Yeah.
just because we're not here to just make a buck. At the end of the day, we're all here to make money and take care of our families. And I actually push that as a very important value. Some people are like, "Oh, we're here to change the world." It's like, yes, we are here to do that, but we're here to make money so we can take care of our families and our kids. I'm sure your kids want food on the table at night. But with that said, we're also here to have a certain culture. We work together. If imagine if the Fort Myers location really didn't want other people to come in his backyard and grow and build wealth. We have to have this really good team dynamic. And I hate saying it. You can take tests. We do Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and Culture Index and all these things on our candidates to try to figure that out. At the end of the day, a lot of times it's a gut feeling. Through interview process and asking questions, you can see why people do what they do. What is their human condition on why they're pursuing this opportunity. And you can pretty quickly tell if it's kind of for the right reasons, the wrong reasons, the right character, the wrong character. And at the end of the day, we're completely okay with saying no to people. We want to protect what we have. If that means growing a little bit slower, I think it means we grow a lot bigger, stronger, and better in the long run. So
Yeah, that's awesome. You could write a book on that stuff there, Justin. I love those thoughts because I think a lot of it comes back to and it's not necessarily like franchise owners. I think a lot of business owners could take advice from this, but like I think obviously the entrepreneurial skills are important and you have to be a free thinker and be able to work on your own and problem solve and be bold and all of those things. But I think at the end of the day, there's also got to be a piece of humility to it all. Like you've got to be humble enough. Like I think some of the best leaders are humble enough to admit when they've made a mistake, when they know, like to your point at the very, very beginning of when we started recording, like where you fall short. And so you've got to be like, okay, I know I'm not good at this. Let me go get somebody that can help me. Like I think that requires a certain amount of humility, and great leaders have that to an extent. I'm not saying they need to be, woe is me, I suck at everything. Like you have to have some, like, you've got to be bold and you've got to be a free thinker and problem solve. And you've got to be confident. Like being humble is not the antithesis of confidence. Like you can still be confident and have some humility to be like, okay, I'm really good at big picture and thinking outside the box, but I need someone to help me with the details. let's go get somebody that can help me with the details. And I think that's really cool. So I love your thoughts and your opinions there. And yeah, it's what you're saying is definitely true, because I've got to work with your franchise owners and they are very much what you described. Like, they are great leaders. They know, they know how to lead people. They know how to hire well. They know how to grow their businesses. And maybe they don't come from a background of restoration. In fact, you probably could tell me some cases where they don't have a background in restoration, but they're good leaders. They know how to problem solve, and we can teach the other technical skills as long as they're good leaders. And I love that. I think that's how you grow a successful business. You don't necessarily, like, the technical skills we can figure out, but you got to have the personality in order to be really successful. So I love that.
Yeah. Well, kind of to that point, everyone can sniff out false humility too.
Yeah.
Or even false confidence. You get these leaders on here, dream big, double it, and say nonsense.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you got to be real. And ultimately, one of my jobs really is to be to defend what we have, to protect it. The best way to destroy your culture, and if you got champions or cheerleaders in your organization, the best way to destroy them is bring in a bad apple, bring in a terrorist. That's the best way to destroy everyone's morale and culture and excitement and passion. So we got to really protect what we have. And that's ultimately my job. And then one last thing, I've been listening to a lot of franchising podcasts, and the thing I hear over and over and over again is listen to your franchisees. They give the best feedback. One of my favorite sayings is turn your critics into coaches. And so, we're young, we're always making mistakes. If I had $1 for every mistake I would made, I'd be a very wealthy person. But to spend the time listening to our franchisees, they give the best feedback. I think it was McDonald's. I think the Quarter Pounder was invented by a franchisee. So some of the best innovation, the best techniques, the best systems are being produced on the ground, these boots on the ground all over the country in different markets, figuring things out. So that's another great thing I love learning from our guys. To pretend me and our executive team have all the answers is just kind of nonsense. So
yeah, no, I love it. I love it and that's what is so cool about the franchise network and the franchise model, is that you do have all of these different people from different backgrounds that can help you grow and can try different things. What works for Noah in Southwest Oregon, might be a little bit different than what works for Brennan in Fort Myers. Like, it's going to be a little bit different, but maybe you can take pieces from both that will just help True North grow as a whole. So I love that.
One of the biggest complaints you hear from business owners are they feel like they're an island, just completely alone. And with franchising, we've got a cool chat system that everyone can talk to and communicate. And, if I don't have the answer, or if the corporate team doesn't have the answer, maybe someone else in the franchise side does, because these guys have a lot of accumulated experience between all of them. So yeah, it's cool to know that you've got a team around you that you can turn to for help.
Yeah, it's awesome. Before we leave, because there's so many pieces here that I think we could spend some time on, but I want to make sure we talk about what your future goals are for True North. I know, we've had a lot of conversations internally as a team with you guys about, some goals you have for your marketing or whatever it is, but I would love to kind of hear, we've talked about, in big picture ways, what your thoughts are on leadership and growth and what sets True North apart. What is your hope for the future? And you don't necessarily have to tie it to a dollar amount or amount of locations or whatever, but what are your goals for True North as you guys look, 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, great question. Like I said, kind of back to the purpose, I want to see as many people building wealth for themselves as business owners inside this franchise system. So we have pretty lofty growth goals for the next 1 to 3 years. We're not slowing down. We're not hitting the brakes. But with that, some of the things I'm most excited about, probably the number one thing I'm excited about really short term, is we're trying to roll out this True North University, this whole training platform, online videos and quizzes and things. So I just, because again, I know so many people in the restoration industry outside of our franchise system that just feel like they don't have the help, or there's, if you ask someone how to do a mold job, you'll ask 10 restoration guys in 10 different companies, and you'll get
10 different
probably
answers.
11 different answers. One guy won't even know what he to do. So kind of standardizing those. We have a lot of work to do on that. We're young, so we have to spend more time in the details and systematizing that. But I'm really excited about that product that we're going to be rolling out really soon. It's just going to help everyone on the quality control side and communicating best practices. But yeah, as far as overall growth, we're excited. We're not slowing down. There's too many people to help, too many people that want to be business owners. Our industry is very large. And this is a whole nother, again, for another podcast, the bar is set really low also for us in our industry. I'm shocked that like for us to want to be, one of our core values is excellence. And we don't want to undershoot that, say, okay, the bar's here, we can be decent and we're going to do really good as a company. We still want to hold that bar up to excellence. And I tell some of our franchisees, we had an example where down in Florida after the hurricane, we were helping a guy. And we went in, it was all pro bono. All of our guys, every single location came in together. We're helping this 92-year-old man who had no insurance, got his house. And then we left the house. We did a good job mostly. And then we left all of the screws and nails in the studs and left. And he called, and he, 92-year-old man, he was like, really appreciate the help, but what do I do with all this? And I was like, oh man, that is so against our core values. We're not going to make any money. So I ended up going to one of our team guys out of Dallas, and he said, let's all go back. Let's do this right. Like, this is True North. The bar is here for us. Even if we can get away with it here because our competition is here, we're going to be up here on excellence. And so always striving for that, even if it doesn't make you more money. That's not even the reason you want to be excellent. So always pushing those core values and culture to our team, especially as we have a large growth scale, is going to be a challenge for 2024. So I'm excited to tackle that challenge this year.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, and to your point, like, I think sticking to those values, I mean, it's going to be challenging. Don't get me wrong. It's never going to feel easy, I don't think, but I think sticking to the values makes it possible. I think, when we talk about our values at Spot On Solutions, Katie talks about them as a way that there are non-negotiables. Like, if you want to be a part of our team, and if we want to hit the goals that we want to hit for 2024 and beyond, like, these are non-negotiables. Like, we have to strive for excellence, or we have to dream big. We have to, live teamwork and collaboration, right? Like, we've got to have these certain things, and they're non-negotiable if you want to achieve what we want to achieve here. And so I love that. And I think that's how it's, it's your guiding light. It's however you want to describe it. Like, when you're ever frustrated at the end of the day, like, how are we going to accomplish this? You can always refer back to your values. Okay, we want to be excellent. We're going to go back and help that guy and fix what we messed up on, or what we maybe, we did a good job, but we want to be excellent. We got to step up the bar a little bit. So I love it. Justin, this has been awesome. Seriously. Thank you for coming on. I think your insights are so cool. And we've obviously got a lot more we need to talk about. So this might turn into a multiple podcast series. I don't know how exactly we'll do it, but there's so much more we want to have you on to talk about. But I want to close today by asking the same questions I ask all of our guests. I know you're going to have some cool answers for these, so I'm excited to ask you. So first and foremost, favorite book or podcast that you've read or listened to recently, or maybe that you're, that you've read or listened to, in the last year or so?
Yeah. Oh man, great question. I kind of already said it, but like I said, I'm an avid reader. I love, personally, I'm reading a book called Habits of the Household for my family, just better ways. I got 3 little kids. I have a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and my wife, and balancing work and personal life is always a fun challenge. In fact, I think I heard someone recently say, it's not a balance, it's a blend. Figure out the blend.
Yeah. Figure out the blend.
And then a little plug on Alex Duda's new book, Restoration Millionaire. There's just a lot of good value in that, specific to our industry. I read a lot of business books, but I don't read a lot of restoration specific books. So I was pretty excited about picking up a copy of that. So
Alex is great. We had him on to talk about the book a few weeks ago, and yeah, he's awesome. We've loved working with him. Second question, and this one, feel free to kind of expand on it, whatever direction you want to go, because I've had some awesome answers that are maybe a little bit different than how I ask it. But how do you relax at the end of a long day? How do you recharge the mental and emotional batteries and all of that? How do you do that?
Yeah, probably two ways. One, whether voluntary or not, is wrestling my 5-year-old. Just hanging out with the kids.
Love it.
If I'm not on business duty, I'm on dad duty. So, and that it's 24/7 job, which I love. I mean, it's the joy of my life. But it is exhausting. I work all day and then I come home and I start wrestling my kids. The other one, and who knows, I might tell you to edit this out later, is one of my bad habits. I love smoking cigars. So,
I
so
love
if
it.
you or any of your audience ever wants to get together and smoke a cigar or send me one or something, it's one of my just favorite things. I can just sit back, relax, 45 minutes of just thinking, strategizing on the business, thinking about family. Just it's a 45-minute window to just sit down, truly relax, clear my mind, and think through day, the week, things like that. So I'm sure it's a bad habit. I probably shouldn't be promoting it.
No, I love it. That's great. I do similar, but with like golfing or fishing, right? Like you got to find that thing that just allows your body to just kind of, yeah, relax at the end of the day and
Yeah.
find some time and some zen to either, yeah, maybe think about what's going on tomorrow at work, or maybe you just need to shut off everything from work for 45 minutes or an hour. And however you accomplish that, it's awesome, man. So I love it. Um, Last question. And you can kind of, again, with this one, kind of take it whatever direction you want, go as far back or as recent as you would like. But if you could rewind to the beginning of your career, so maybe it's back to when you were in college, or back to maybe just the beginning of True North. If you could rewind and tell younger Justin one thing, what would that one thing be?
Oh, good question. I I I might say two things.
Perfect.
Um, One is, and I've said it over and over and over again, read, read, read. I hate cheesy platitudes. So I'm sorry I'm that cliche guy on the podcast, giving all these, turn your critics into coaches, whatever. But the reality is, the more you read, the more you understand the why of everything, how to sell better, how to build businesses, how to lead people. Just there's so much information. We all think we know so much and we don't. And so just read, read, read. And if I would have acquired some of that knowledge even sooner, it would have been more beneficial for my career. And then the other one, and I say this all the time, is bet on yourself. A lot of people are out in a career building an organization for someone else. And one of the best bets you can do is on yourself. You can, whether it's starting a franchise with True North or whatever it is, figure out what you love doing, which is also kind of a cliche and cheesy thing to say, love what you do. But figure out what you're good at, what you're built for, and then invest in yourself building that. So don't build so much wealth for a ton of other people in a big corporation. Work on building something that you own, that at the end of the day, you're going to own the value of what you're putting that work and that time and that effort into. So, and when I see people make that transition, it is one of the most rewarding things I've seen. It's one of the hardest things. Not everyone's built to be an owner, and I can give bad advice. People who, some people, I should say, stay in that job. Don't quit your job. But when you see that person who has a little bit of that entrepreneurial drive and that desire, and they're struggling with certain things, when I get to see someone come out of building wealth for someone else and now betting on themselves and succeeding in that, there's nothing more rewarding for me. I think it's just amazing to have a front row seat to that. And so those are the kind of the two things I would say. For me, I would say maybe I've started a little bit sooner. So
That's great advice, Justin. Seriously, those are some great tips, and I think I think that speaks to everybody. Like, bet on yourself a little bit and do some more reading. Like, those are great recommendations. So, Justin, thanks again for coming on. Seriously, like, this has been super insightful. I know our audience is going to get a lot of great value out of this, and it's been fascinating to hear your thoughts and your story. And I think what you guys are doing over at True North is awesome, and it's awesome for me to be a part of it in some small way with Spot On Solutions. And so it's exciting to watch you guys grow, and we're hoping that continues throughout the rest of the year and into the future. So, anyways, Justin, thanks again for coming on. We're definitely gonna have to have you on again in the future to talk all things restoration and True North, but we really appreciate it.
Well, likewise, Hayden, thank you so much for the opportunity and the time, and also for Spot On Solutions. You guys have been amazing to partner with. It's helped our company a lot. So appreciate everything you guys do.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.